last class we were making this html.xls file, right? In this file I was talking about the various web components, right? And I told you that these are the various web components on a page: link, buttons, input boxes, checkboxes, radio button, list, images, text, and all these things are the components of a web page, right? So every component has a tag name and set of mandatory and optional attributes. Fine. And I had told you how to install Firebug and the Chrome inspector, how to work with that. We'll again look at it. We'll again look at it, right? Just 1 minute. Let Firefox open. Okay. So on Firefox, just a minute. Right. So if I am on any web page and suppose I am on gmail.com, right, and using Firefox I want to investigate this page. So in Firefox I told you how to install Firebug. This is Firebug. Using Firebug you can actually look at the page source, right? And that's what we did for a link. In case of a link, we saw that if we look at a link, then the link will always start with anchor tag A, and href attribute of the link will point towards the URL which is opened when you click on the link. This href attribute will be present with all the links on all the web pages, right? Similarly, if you talk about a button, right? If you talk about a button, for example, this sign in is a button. Then the tag or name of the button is always input. Fine. Rather, in case of input box also, checkbox, radio button. All these four components have the same tag name known as input in HTML. Right? Even if I look at any text field, you will see that the tag name is input. Even a checkbox like this is a checkbox, right? Stay signed in. If I look at this checkbox, then tag name will always be input. Okay, right? But the set of mandatory attributes, they differ. In case the tag name equals to input and type is submit, then it becomes a button. If you look at the sign in button, then you will see that the type of this button, type attribute is mandatory attribute. If the type submit, then it becomes a button. If the type is equal to text, hold on, then it becomes the input box, right? It becomes a text field. If type is equal to checkbox, then it becomes a checkbox. And with input field, if the type attribute is equal to radio, then it becomes a radio button. For example, on this page, if you look at this checkbox, then for this checkbox you will see that type equals to checkbox attribute is there. Okay, so this is how these components they work. In case of a list, what is a list? List is like a drop list, which is like this is a drop list. On this page, this is a list having various countries. Fine. If you look at the list in Firebug, then list always starts with the select tag. Okay, a list will always, remember, it will always start with the select tag, and inside the select tag there will be various option tags. Okay, each option tag will represent an option. We'll look at that later on, but always remember, list will always start with the tag name known as select, but there are no mandatory attributes with list. The tag name is select. Okay, there is no mandatory attribute. If you look at images, right? For example, on this page, this is the image. Google is the image. If you look, investigate this image, right? Then, when you look at this image, you will see that it's got various attributes. Fine. One of the attributes is source. Source attribute points towards the URL which will open when you interact with the link. Okay. So this is the URL, and if you write over here, like if you give this URL, you'll actually see the image coming. Hold on. Go to gmail.com. Look at this image. Get the URL. There is some disturbance, right? I request everybody to keep your microphone on mute. I think right now it's okay. It's okay, right? Hold on, let me. So this is the URL. Oh, that's a reference URL. That's a relative path, I guess. Why is it not opening? I did not copy the complete one. Yeah, this is the Google image actually. It is loading from this URL, and this URL is inside the source tag. So the source attribute is always there in case of an image, which tells you the place from which the image is loading. So source attribute, if the tag name for an image is img and attribute is src, this is a mandatory attribute which refers to the URL from which the image is coming. Right? Text, the text which is visible on a web page, text like normal text like this text. Okay, so the thing is, text you cannot define to any particular tag, right? You cannot define text to any particular tag. Text can occur in div tag, sometimes para, span tag, right? Or you have got li and ul tags, and that also sometimes text comes up. There is no specific tag name for a text. Don't think that a text will always come under a particular tag. No, there is no particular tag name for a text. Okay, mandatory attributes, there is no mandatory attribute. Text can come anywhere, it's not predictable. Fine. And web tables and frames, we'll talk about these as we proceed with the course. I'll not talk about them right now. These are not visible to the eye. Right? So now every component over here can have set of optional attributes. These optional attributes are like ID, name, class. Then these attributes will come up. 99.99% of the time, these attributes will come up. For every component, you can or you cannot have these three optional attributes. If the developer is good enough, he will give an optional attribute with every element so that it can be detected with an automation script. But if he has not given it, it's not that we cannot detect it. We can detect it. There are various ways to do that. Fine. Now, uh, going further, right? I'll create a new project. In day 4, we couldn't do much, right, because of some issue, right? I'll create a new Java project called as day 5, right? And I'll create a new class over here, say Gmail. And with very simple examples, I'm going to explain you the concepts. Suppose I need to go to Gmail and I want to enter username and password. Or I want to interact with the web page, I want to read some text. How do I do that? One, how do I do that? Secondly, if I have to do that in multiple browsers like Chrome, ICE, Firefox and all, how will I do that? Well, you know what? If your code works on one browser, it will work on the other browser as well, because the website, they do not vary their layout, or the web page, it doesn't vary its layout as per the browser. In the end, Selenium only works on the page source of the application, right? The page source remains the same in all the browsers. So if a script is running in Mozilla, it will run in Chrome as well as IE. It's not like that it will not run over there. Okay, because the page source, it remains the same. Fine. So now how do I do that? Suppose in this Gmail class I write WebDriver. Okay, and in this project I will include Selenium jar files as well. Okay, and I write the code driver dot get to the URL, go to gmail.com. Fine. Now after going to gmail.com, I need to write something in this username. Fine. So I access this username field, and you'll see that this field has the input tag because it's a text box. ID is email. Now developer has given an optional attribute called ID with this username field. This is a very good thing. Okay. Generally IDs, they are unique. Every object, it has a unique ID. Alright. If the developer has given same IDs to multiple components on a web page, you should seriously go and have a word with him, because IDs are supposed to be unique. Fine. So I can identify this field using its ID. And how do I do that? You can write here driver dot, there is a command known as find element. Now what does this command do? Find element. Right. As the name suggests, it will find any component on the web page. But how do I work with that? If you go to the documentation of Selenium on seleniumhq.org, and if you go to the downloads section here, fine, then you will see that this is the Java doc for Selenium, and if you open it, you will see that out here. Hold on. In the WebDriver interface, you see a function known as find element. It finds the first web element using the given method. Right? What do you mean by first element? I'll tell you in some time. It takes a reference of the by class. By is a class which tells you the various locator strategies in Selenium. You can find an object by the class name, CSS selector, ID, link, text, name. So all these are the criteria with which you can find an element on the web page. And we are going to see ID over here, which is the most simple thing. Right. So I'll write over here find element. The class is by dot. When you write by dot, you get all the possible actions. I'll write ID. Okay. ID of the element is email. Fine. By the ID email. So what will this do? This command will find the element email on the page. Right. And what does it returns you? This returns me back driver dot find element returns you back a reference of web element. Now what is web element? Okay, this will return you reference of web element. Suppose I'll write over here web element w equals to this, or to be more precise, username equals to this. Now what is a web element? Web element is an interface. Again, it's an interface, and it's got various functions which are related to the various HTML components. For example, what can I do with the HTML component? I can, on a web page, what all can I do? I can clear a field. I can click on a link button or any other object. Right? I can like get the location of the object and the size of the object, whether the object is displayed or not, get the text out of the web page. Fine is enabled, right? So these are the various operations which you can perform with any component on the page. Send keys. Send keys is used to simulate typing into an element, right? So all the user functions which you perform with a web page, they are defined inside this web element interface. Okay. So what you can do is you can write over here. Once you have found the web element, you write web element username dot. You will get all those functions which you were getting inside the documentation. Okay. For example, one of the functions is send keys. Okay. Inside this, you can type in anything. Suppose I type dummy. So this will simulate typing dummy inside the username field. Okay. Another thing is that it's quite important and helpful to import this Java documentation inside Eclipse, because every time you cannot open seleniumhq.org and go inside seleniumhq.org. It's quite important and convenient to import this Java documentation inside Eclipse. How do you import this Java documentation inside Eclipse? You just copy the link location of Java doc, right click on it and select copy link location, and basically copy this location where Java docs are located, and go to your project properties. Right under Java breadpath, these are the jars which you have added. Right, in these jars you have to go to the jar file, this one, Selenium Java 2.x.jar, and whatever is the version you are having, and go to Java doc location. Fine, edit the location and paste the path here, and from the path remove index.html from the end. That's it. Okay. Now this documentation is imported inside Eclipse. If I move my mouse over anything, like I move my mouse over send keys, you'll get the description of this function. Use this method to simulate typing into an element. Right. Similarly, if you write username dot, you get a lot of functions. If I click on those functions, you will see that the description of those functions they come up. So every time you don't need to run to seleniumhq.org, open seleniumhq.org and find the appropriate function over there. You don't need to do that every day. Okay, you just need to uh, read it from here. Okay. Question is being asked. It is that can you please explain about web element interface? Well, what is web element interface? Web element interface is something which helps you to define a component on the page. Hold on, I tell you. In a very layman's term, like if you see a web page, if I see a web page like this, I know that from my experience as a human being, I know that this is an input field in which I have to write, this is a button, this is a link, this is a text, this is an image, right? But for Selenium, everything is a web element. Technically, don't confuse this with web element of QTP. If you know QTP, it is not like the web element of QTP. No. Okay. For Selenium, technically everything is a web element. An image is a web element. A button is a web element. This checkbox is a web element. The page is a web element. Fine. And web element interface, it defines that behavior. Like these are the functions inside the web element interface. What all can you do with the web element on a page? You can clear the value if it is a text field. You can click on it. Right. Just ignore these two for time being. Right. Like you can get the location of the element. You can get the size. You can get the tag name, text. In case if it is a visible text on the page, you can check whether the element is displayed on the page or not, or if it is enabled or not. Fine. So all these are the functions. You got this? What web element is actually? Fine. It's a component on the page. And when you write driver.findElement, what does find element function returns you? It returns me the first web element using the given method. What do you mean by first web element? Suppose on the page there are two elements with the ID email. It should not happen that two elements have the same ID. It's not good, but suppose if two elements have the same ID, one element is out here on the page and other element is out here on the page. Now when Selenium scans the page, right, when you write driver.findElement command, it scans the page and it finds the element by the given criteria. It scans the page from the top left to the bottom right. It scans it like this. Okay, so it goes from left to right and it keeps on going down. Now, if there are two elements on the page with same ID, one out here and another out here, then this will find the first element, that is, this will find this element. Okay, what if I want to find the second one? We'll look at that later on, but understand the behavior of find element function. It finds the first element with a certain criteria. Right. Similarly, I can extract the other fields as well. I can write over here web element password equals to driver dot find element. Now I have to find the password element on the page. If you observe the password element, then password element has got this ID. Okay, and you will write over here by the ID this. Fine. This is the password element. And you write over here password dot send keys some password. Okay. So now if you run this, Yeah, I'll answer that question, Srinivas. I'll answer it in some time. You see this, right? It's working. Okay. So you can identify the element on the basis of ID if the element has got ID, right? The question is which is being asked to me is like, how do I verify dynamic components on the page? For example, if you look at this number, lots of space, this number is increasing every time, every second. This number is increasing. If you look at this number, then this is a span with the ID quota. You know, ID will always remain same for this. So every time you want to read the number, you extract the number with the ID, but you will get the updated content. Right? I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it in detail as well. So it doesn't matter, you know, if tomorrow, suppose there's a web page, there's a website like this one, timesofindia.com. Okay. Now on a page like this, talking about a link like this, the headlines. Like the headlines, it will change after every 1 day or after every 10 hours. Fine. So my code should not be like this that the headlines changes and my code goes for a toss. Okay. So that's why, you know, every component cannot have an ID on the page. Right. We were quite lucky. We were doing a very simple example on Gmail, wherein every component, username and password and all had an ID. But many times every component cannot have an ID. Right. Lakshmi, I'll come over to visible components and hidden components and all. I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. Right. But first, let us see how to recognize the components. Right. Now, every component on the page cannot have an ID. Right. So that's why there are other selector criteria as well, other locator criteria. ID is just one of them. Right. Another one is XPath, another one is CSS selector. These are the ones which are used a lot. Fine. We'll talk about that. Let's start with XPath. What XPaths are. Okay. XPath is like the physical address of the element on a page. Right. For example, a simple example which I always give to people, like every house has a house number. Fine. Suppose there's a city and there's a house in it. So we recognize it like that house number XYZ, city XYZ. Right. Now, no matter who stays in the house, we don't care. But the house has a house number. Similarly, XPath is also like an address to the element. A website like Times of India, this element, the headlines will have an XPath. Okay. Even if tomorrow the headlines they change, the XPath will remain the same. Because XPath is like the address of the. When does XPath changes? If the layout of the page changes. If tomorrow the headlines instead of here, they shift the headlines, it is shifting somewhere over here. Then the XPath of the element changes. But if the location of the element remains same, okay, then the XPath will not change. If the element gets shifted from one location to another, then also the chances are that the XPath it doesn't change, but many times it changes. Fine, it's not that XPath will always change if the element shifts. No, right? So now, how do we recognize XPaths? What are XPaths? Okay, there are two types of XPaths. One is known as complete XPath or absolute XPath, and other one is known as partial XPath. Okay, there are two types of XPath: complete and absolute XPath, and the second one is partial XPath. In, you know what, the best way is that to identify XPaths and all, you go to Google, make sure Firebug is installed, you install another add-on known as FirePath. You just type FirePath download and go to this link in your Mozilla. Fine. What will happen is that you will get an add-on called Add to Firefox. You add it to Firefox and all everything. Right. Restart it. Restart your Firefox. And now after restarting, when you open your Firebug, you will get an add-on in Firebug known as FirePath. This add-on helps you to calculate XPath. Right. In this add-on, there will be an option called Generate Absolute XPath. Okay, just check this. You just check it, and then move your mouse over any component. Suppose I move it over username field. Then this is the XPath of the username field. And this is the complete XPath. How is this complete XPath calculated practically? Right. Now every web page is made of tags. Right. The web page is starting from the HTML tag. Right. So that's why this complete XPath starts from HTML tag. Inside the HTML tag, there are head and body tags, two tags. I am interested to go inside the body tag because the username field is inside the body tag, right? So we write it over here like this, /body. Fine. Then inside the body tag, there is a div tag. Div means a division. So then I write div1, that means go inside the first division. Inside the first division, there are various divisions, right? This is first, second, third division. I am interested to go inside the second division, this one, because my username field is inside the second division. So you go inside div2 inside this. So similarly, you keep on traversing down the web page with the help of tag names till the time you reach the tag in which you are interested. So this is how absolute XPath is calculated. Okay, but you should not use this kind of absolute XPath. Why? Because tomorrow if something changes in the site and we add a component, we end up adding a component in between, then all the XPaths of all the elements will change and maintenance will be a very tough thing, right? So you should not use complete XPath or absolute XPath until or unless it's not necessary, right? Sometimes what happens is that Selenium fails to recognize the objects. But when you give absolute XPath, which actually pinpoints towards the object from the root of the page, Selenium identifies it. So sometimes it becomes quite necessary to use absolute XPath, but as far as my experience is concerned, don't use them. Right? You should always use partial XPath. What is partial XPath? In Firebug, you will get a partial XPath based on the ID. Right? If you look at the FirePath and uncheck this option, generate absolute XPath, and look at the username field, then this is the absolute XPath which Firebug gives you. Sorry, partial XPath which Firebug gives you. If you copy this XPath and take it here, right? There is no dot, you just remove the dot from the beginning. Double slash means that it's a partial XPath. It's not starting from the root of the document, right? Then there is a star. Star actually means the tag name. Okay, you know what the layout of this XPath is like this: double slash, then you give the tag name, then you write ID equals to ID of the element. So star means that there can be any tag on the page. You should not write star, you should actually write the tag name input, an input tag with the ID email. This is what the XPath is. Okay. So even if I use it over here, instead of writing by ID email, I can identify the username field with the XPath. I can write web element username equals to driver dot find element, by which criteria, by the XPath, and you give the XPath here. This is the XPath. Okay, that is, there is an input field whose ID is email, and you type in something inside it. Right? Okay. Now, look, sometimes if you have a look at a component like on the page, say again, we go to timesofIndia.com. Right? Now on this page, if you look at the headlines, this is the headlines. Okay, this headlines has got this XPath. Now this XPath will not change even if tomorrow the headline changes, because this gives you a kind of path, the path where the headlines are present on the page. That means there is an element with the ID survey1, right? Hold on. Yeah, this is the element. It's a div with the ID survey1, right? Inside it there is another div. This is the div. Inside it there is another div. This is the div, and then inside it there is another div, which is this one. Then there is a h1 tag and a link. This is the h1 tag and this is a link. So this kind of gives you the path where the headlines are lying. So even if the headlines they change tomorrow, this will not change. Question is being asked: is it possible to find an element by both? No. You just have to give one locator criteria at one time. There is no need, right? You just have to why would you like to do that? Why would you like to identify an element with the ID as well as XPath? Because if it's got an ID, you can directly recognize it with the ID. Nothing will stop you, right? Another question is being asked: can we use java.lang? No, you have to use by.id. Don't use the other ID. ID has to be coming is to be coming from by class. By is an internal class which has got all the locator strategies. Fine. ID has to come from that. Okay. So now this is about Exparte. Now similarly, if you look at this changing number over here, this number can change, but the XPath, you see the XPath on the screen, it remains same. It remains same, right? In case we always have XPath. There is no case where you will never have XPath. What is an XPath? XPath is made on the basis of page source. Right, you will always get an XPath to an element. There is no element on any web page which has not got an XPath. Every element has got an XPath. For example, if you look at this text which I have highlighted, if you look at this text in Firebug, then this text is inside a para tag P. Now this P tag has got no ID, nothing, but the component has got an XPath. XPath will always be there, whether it is partial XPath, full XPath, you will always get an XPath to the component. It is not like you will never get an XPath to a component. Okay, right? Now, if you come down, look, Flash is something different. Image will always have an XPath. If you look at image over here, for example, image like this, or an image like this is the image. Image will always have an expert. But flash objects are completely different. There is no internal support in Selenium to test flash. In Selenium, there is no internal support to test flash objects. You have to use JavaScript and all. That's a completely different world. Okay. I'm not talking about that right now because it's not so simple to test Flash applications with Selenium. Right. Let's talk about the general web components right now because Flash is having no. What is a Flash? It's a kind of image, right? Inside image you don't have expanse. But yes, if you have to find this image, then this image will have an expanse, right? If I have to find this image Google, then Google image will have an expanse. But what is the text of this image? I cannot read it with Selenium. It's an image. You cannot read the internal components like what is written. Google is written on the image. You cannot read it. You can compare the images. That's easy. You can compare with Java. You can compare with Selenium. But what is written inside the image? It's not something which you can do very easily. Alright. So now similarly, like this is I was talking about this number. Right? Is there a tool called look, there are many tools to compare images. It's not just one. You can also write your own code. I have done that. I had a project in which I had to compare two images. You just go inside the bits and pixels, you use Java imaging API and you can compare the images. It's not a big deal. Okay. So but yes, I'm not sure why people compare images while doing automation because automation is done on stable projects. Stable projects in the sense they are in the regression phase. I know that even if I change something in my inbox, this Google image will not change on the page. But still people do it, right? It's, it should not be. Anyways, so alright. So I had extracted the username and password username with the help of Exparte, right? Yeah, how to get Exparte on different browsers? This is again a question. For example, I am on Chrome, fine, and on Chrome I go to the site timesofIndia.com. How to get the Exparte on Chrome? Exparte will always remain same on all the browsers because the website it opens the same way on all the browsers. Right? What you need to do is that you need to right click on this link and select inspect element in Chrome. You need to open Chrome inspector the day I explained that, and you need to right click on the component whose XPath you want and you will automatically get the option copy XPath in Chrome. Okay, you can copy the XPath and you see this is the XPath which you are getting in Chrome. Only thing is you have to remove these double quotes and replace them by single quotes when you are looking in Chrome. Fine. In IE you don't have any particular tool to get the XPath, but if the XPath is retrieved from Chrome, if the XPath is retrieved from IE, it will be or from Mozilla, it will be same. For example, in Mozilla also, if I get the XPath of the first component, this is the headline. This is the XPath you are getting from Mozilla. So both the XPaths from Chrome and Mozilla are same. It is actually one, I deleted it. Right. So you don't have to worry. If one piece of XPath is working on one browser, it will work on the other browser until or unless the developer has not made the code in such a way that the website opens in a different manner on every browser. Okay. So, alright. Now, just a minute. If XPaths are different, how to run on? Then you'll have to write separate logics and separate files. But I've never seen that happening. I've never seen a website which has got different XPaths in different browsers. Like until unless it's a special website like a Gmail one or Google one. Otherwise, 99.99% of the websites they don't do that. They don't unnecessarily display the website differently in different browsers. Okay. If that's the case, then you will have to change your complete logic. You'll have to write different Java files for different browsers. Okay. Now, similarly, then this number is increasing, right? But the XPath will remain same. I will give you an exercise at your home. Just try to do it. Okay. This number is changing, right? This one. Write the logic which prints the first 10 changed values of this number. Okay, like whenever the number changes, your code should print the new number. Okay, so your code should actually print the updated number, and it should print the first 10 updated numbers. Just try and do that. Okay. Now similarly, when we write practically, okay, we don't write two lines. I'm first finding the password, then typing into password. I'm first finding the username, then typing into the username. We write everything in one go. I'll write over here driver.find element by this XPath. This will give me web element. Fine. In the end, I'll write dot send keys the username. Okay. We write everything in one go. The evaluation, it starts from the left side to the right side. First, this part is evaluated, and the web element is found, and inside it, this is typed. Right. Similarly, for the password, you will write over here driver.find element by the ID password dot send keys. You can type some password, right? And suppose I want to get the text out of the page. For example, I want this text. Then this is the XPath. Now this text has got the complete XPath, right? If I want to extract the text, then I can write driver dot find element by the XPath. It gives the XPath of the text. In the end, dot get text. Get text command will get the visible text out of the element. See, sometimes some components are hidden. Get text will not get you the text from the hidden components. Like you move your mouse over the component and the component gets visible or something like that. If it's a hidden component, then get text will not get it. So you print the value of x, and when you run this, you see that, and if you look at the output, you will actually get the text as well. Fine. So it's quite simple. Everything, all the commands in Selenium API, everything is inbuilt. Okay, you really don't have to worry to write your own things. The whole API is inbuilt. You just have to understand. You just have to understand the commands. Now the question is being asked is how to get all the fields, all the boxes. I was not getting all fields. Do you suppose I have to? No, there is no get all fields function. If you have to get multiple elements on the page, then you have to use a different function known as find elements. Okay, I will talk about that. I will talk about that in the coming classes. Right? Like how to find all the links out of the page or all the buttons out of the page, or if you want limited objects from the page, for example, write a Selenium code which will only extract these links out of the page and then click on each and every link to check if the other page is opening or not. So these kinds of scenarios I will take. I'll take. Upinder is asking the question, what is the difference between find element and assert? Assert is something else, Upinder. Assert is used in TestNG framework to do the validations. Okay. Yeah, I think you are getting quite confused here. Assert is not the part of Selenium API. It's a part of TestNG. Okay. You will not find anything like assert over here, driver dot assert or something like that. Okay. Assert is used to validate things. Find element is used to find the element on a page. Okay. Any other question from anybody? Anything else?
Ashish, can I once I am say read the text of that link when I did string x equal to something something I read that that whatever link is there the actual visible text. Then can I put validation on that text? And supposedly if x equal to something, then perform something.
Yeah, you can put the validations, and to put the validations, you need TestNG or JUnit framework. You need to use assertions. Okay. Right now, I am not talking about any validations. In the first 10, 12 classes, I will not talk about validations. I will talk about the features of Selenium.
Okay.
Because learning the tool is important. First, learn the tool, and validations and all anybody can put. That's not a big deal. That's just need to know the commands. But first, learning the tool is important. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else? I'm on video 8. Can I watch the video? How it is? Yeah, you can do that. Neither you can watch the video 8. Yeah. Okay. I want to know how to handle calendar pop-up. Yeah, I will take up the example of calendar as well in the course. Okay. It's not so simple. At this stage, I cannot explain you how to manage calendar. Okay. We make our own customized functions to manage calendar actually. Right. If you already have the access to videos, right, you can go to this. Hold on. If you already have access to videos, I'm not sure about that, but you can watch this topic in module 15, that is building custom functions for web tables and calendars. You will come to know. Okay, so right. Okay, and anything else from anybody? In this example, I've taken the examples of web tables and calendars and all. The daily class I am starting it from 8 o'clock from tomorrow. Okay, from tomorrow the regular classes will start, and I'll shift the timings 1 hour before the normal timings. The class from tomorrow, it will be at this time, that is 8 to 9 a.m. IST, which is around 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. PST, which is around 10:30 to 11:30 PM EST. Okay, this will be the class timings from tomorrow. I am shifting it 1 hour before the normal timings because a lot of people they are requesting this.